Welcome to Lesson 12, Chapter 12. If you have not already done so, please open up your Premiere Pro Project Lesson 12 and make sure your workspace is in the effects setting. Mine defaultly came to that. If not, if you came into editing, click on effects, and also make sure your sequence 01 fixed effects is open. This is the first one we'll be looking at in this chapter as we take a more in-depth look at what a fixed effect or intrinsic effect is. Those two names are interchangeable, or the other type of effect is called standard effect. All right, diving into this, your fixed effects or intrinsic effects are anything that is already included with the clip itself. So if I click on your first clip in this sequence, so we have this lizard, nothing has been applied to this one. Basically, it's going to show you up here in the effects panel, you're going to now have control over geometric, opacity, speed, and audio properties. And they're defaultly there, but no changes have been made. And of course, in this one, as we look, you do not see any audio controls. That is because this clip does not have any audio present with it. If it did, we would see a volume control up here as well. And let me go ahead and expand this panel out so you can see it a little bit better. Okay. So with this panel, you can see if this was not already dropped open, go ahead and drop down the motion arrow, and this opens up position, scale, rotation. You also have opacity, time remapping, which is the speed that the clip is traveling at. And you can come in here and set keyframes. Those are the little icons that appear throughout the clip. So I'm going to go ahead and put one on here. Basically, if I wanted to make my scale 159, which is probably a little bit too much, you can toggle your animation on, and you can see that a keyframe now has appeared. This little icon denotes that at that frame in time, it would be 159. If I came back down here and changed it back to 100, anytime you make a change in the data here, it will reflect a keyframe on that specific frame. And you can add as many keyframes as you'd like. Typically, it's usually good to start at the beginning of a clip and go to the end of the clip and let the computer calculate the math for you. So if we were going from 100 to 150, we would just let it do a smooth calculation from that. Of course, you can set the points closer, so if you want the speed to happen really fast and then it just holds at the end, that would be okay too. That's why we have keyframes. They give you a little bit more control. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pull these off because this clip did not have any, and the book will tell us about that a little bit more. Let me go ahead and minimize this back down. So as I click on our next clip, you can see that some of these animation toggles have already been engaged, and you can see right here at the beginning of the clip we have keyframes, and at the end of the clip we also have keyframes. So the book has applied an animation to the clip. It also tells us to take a look at the first clip. So as I scrub through it, you just see the lizard setting there. Nothing else is really happening to the clip, just however it was shot. If we scrub over the second clip, you can now see it's being pushed in. So they did apply a push, and it was not nearly 150. I think it took us up to probably 125. So nice smooth push in there on the lizard, and that was using our fixed effects, and those are located in our effects control panel. The other effects that the book talks about is standard effects, and they live over here in the effects panel. And we have a variety. There are 17 different categories to choose from, so a lot of different choices. And there are several different ways to apply those. Very similar to the transitions that you've applied in the past. You can come in and pick one that you like, and you can just left click and drag it over, and notice that it now applied here in the effects control panel as well, and I can make adjustments there if I'd like to do so. So that was just left click and drag. Hit Control Z. If I highlighted both of my clips and repeated that process, it will have now applied it to clip 1 and clip 2, so they both have it. I hit Control Z again to get that off, and if I want to apply it without dragging all the clips down there, whatever clip I have chosen. This is the first clip here. I can double click on this effect. And if I go back to this clip here, you can see it has put the effect back on. So that's another way to put the effect on. And sometimes these will have some default settings depending on what you choose that will already get you started, or you'll have to come in and manipulate them. And also you can turn any of the effects on and off at any given time. So if I do something pretty crazy with this, like made the picture green and I didn't want it, or I wanted to save it for later, I can turn that off and it's still there in my effects control panel. It's not completely gone. If you don't like what you have and you want it completely gone, you can hit delete on your keyboard when it's highlighted and it will take it back off. So that's kind of how the effects work in those regards. They also have some of these icons, as you can see here on the right side. As we're starting out, this might not mean a whole lot to you. I'm going to briefly cover these so that way you'll have at least heard the terminology and maybe have a basic understanding of this stuff. If you see this icon right here, it's also located up here at the top. It's called Accelerated Effects. And this here has to deal with the graphics card and the Mercury playback engine. So if you see that tied into one of your effects, that basically will allow Premiere Pro performance to perform at optimal. It will go through the processing of those effects much faster. And that can help as far as your final export times. Not all the effects have them, as you can see, like color balance, broadcast colors don't have them. So they're on some of them, they're not on all of them. Next up is this 32-bit color. Back in the day, most all TV stuff, video games, was 8-bit color. And that means it has 256 steps of color. And that's basically your brightness from 0% to 100%. And then you're like 32, that's a whole lot more. So stuff steps up from 8-bit to 10-bit and all the way up to 32-bit. So 32-bit is basically the equivalent of lossless, and it gives you really good results. It's basically over 4 billion possible color steps, so a whole lot more than just the 8-bit color. However, defaultly, if you don't see that icon, it's going to do 8-bit color, which is the RGB stuff. Okay, and then lastly, you see one that says YUV. This also has to do with brightness of the image that's separated from the colors, and it allows you to adjust the stuff more easily for color correction because it's going to keep your contrast and exposure separate on a separate channel, so it does not shift the colors as you change your brightness and contrast. It works in 3 channels, so you have one that's luminous, aka brightness, your blue channel, and your red channel. So it's just the native processing for how maybe footage was recorded on your camera versus the RGB color space that the computer natively works in. And the only drawback, if you're working in the RGB color space of the computer, it might not be quite as accurate on your color as this YUV setting. And again, I know this was a lot to take in. Hopefully you now have a little insight on those. And in the next video, we'll actually start applying some effects.